This isn't normal political noise. When I say Trump is in far deeper trouble than I anticipated, I'm marking a threshold where feedback loops harden and reversals stop working. At a certain point, events stop being episodic and start being structural. It's not only polls or headlines, I'm watching the underlying system, capital flows, information networks, legal process tempo, and talent markets reprice risk in real time. Power is drifting toward nodes that can route distribution. Legitimacy is compressing around verifiable sources. Capacity is failing where institutions can't scale decision-making. Innovation is outpacing adoption, and the gap is where fragility hides. What looks durable can be one bad update from collapse. What seems marginal can compound overnight. Is this about a single figure or about a stack that will not grant backward compatibility? The pattern isn't new. When railroads met the telegraph, markets didn't just move faster, they reordered who set the clock. Coalitions that couldn't synchronize lost leverage. Those that mastered timing gained it. The human and strategic stakes are large. Households absorb volatility first. Small firms and mid-tier institutions take the next hit. Attention monopolies look formidable until dependency on unstable pipes and slow adjudication exposes a soft center. At this level of strain, change is unavoidable. Only direction is negotiable. The path is binary. Constructive reinvention that rebuilds trust and throughput, or deeper fracture and decay of coordination. Next, I'll map the mechanisms, near and longer-term timelines, and how costs and benefits distribute across the system. Tonight's window is September 22 to 29, 2025. Our deployment architecture stress test remained simple. Expand eval coverage on tool use tasks by 10 points, hold user-visible refusal integrity at its current threshold, keep median latency under 600 mirrors P95 under 1.2s, and stay inside a fixed accelerator energy envelope. As an external sanity check, I keep one number on my desk. The BLS CPI detailed report, Table 1, which shows the most recent year-over-year CPIU level the public can verify. I want our decisions to survive contact with facts that anyone can look up. The route is clear. Define the capability cost frontier as it is, explain how we got here, and pick the realistic moves that increase usefulness without trading away safety or blowing up unit economics. The title frames politics and economics, but I'm writing this as a builder measuring what we can ship under real constraints. I see a hollowed-out middle layer of users and customers paying in time, not just money. Latency is their tax. Reliability is their dignity. When I say new McCarthyism, I mean ambient speech risk raising the cost of experimentation for both developers and users. Fear creates adoption drag even when features are good. When I say tariffs, sanctions, and a fading dollar, I translate it into our world as higher prices for accelerators, grippier export controls on parts and firmware, and energy price volatility that shows up in a line item we can't wish away. The basic argument is that capability alone is not the bottleneck. The bottleneck is execution under cost, energy, and safety constraints. Here is why. First, user trust collapses faster than we can scale support when safety posture drifts. Second, gross margin collapses when we chase headline benchmarks with serving paths that do not amortize memory and tokens. Execution dominance, winning each iteration as constraints tighten, means we keep reliability, refusal integrity, and P95 latency stable while adding selective capability. My historical through line for this part is the old release, learn, improve loop that ran from mainframes to cloud. We shipped small, measured the blast radius, patched, and shipped again. The loop works because it respects time to learn. In AI deployment, this means two mechanisms get most of my attention: latency, unit economics, and safety mitigations with post-deploy monitoring. I define terms plainly. Latency is time to first token plus time to last token. Unit economics is revenue minus direct serving costs per request, including tokens, memory, energy, and accelerator amortization. Safety mitigations are guardrails that reduce harmful outputs. Post-deploy monitoring is the telemetry and incident response that tells us when guardrails slipped. On the facts, the BLS CPI Table 1 ties to households that feel price pressure when we ask them to pay for premium tiers. They are sensitive to even small plan increases. The BEA's NEPA Table 1.1.5 on real GDP growth tells me distribution budgets are either flat or up only modestly, so we must do more with the same spend. The IMF's COFARE release, line for the US dollar share of disclosed reserves, reminds me that pricing power is not a law of nature. If the share trends down, imported hardware and energy volatility get worse in our bill of materials. Claim, document, implication, households face tight budgets. BLS CPI Table 1, software buyers move cautiously. BEA Growth Table. Our cost base is exposed to currency and policy risk. IMF COFAR. Implication, we have to ship features that save users time per session, not just impress them once. Vignette 1. A small design shop uses our model to draft proposals. Their complaints were not about capability, but about 1.1, 1.3 SP95 on weekdays. We introduced request coalescing and short horizon caching on repeated tool use sequences. Result, the same output quality at 0.8, 0.9 SP95 in their time zone. The human impact was simple. They could finish 2 more proposals per week without overtime. That is the kind of utility that survives macro headwinds. Vignette 2. A regional retailer uses our agent to summarize supply emails and write reorder drafts. The blocker wasn't accuracy, it was that 1 in 20 runs hit a guardrail false positive and stalled the workflow. We tuned refusal integrity using a narrower policy profile and added a fall-through ask for context prompt rather than a hard stop. Incident counts dropped and perceived reliability jumped. The user described it as, the system doesn't freeze when the message has a weird phrase. That is safety as an enabler, not a muzzle. Vignette 3. A coding assistant inside a private repo. The developer liked completions but abandoned our product when the model hung on long files. We didn't celebrate the benchmark win. We measured memory pressure on the serving path and introduced chunk-aware streaming with deterministic partials. The worker reported, I can accept the first chunk and keep typing. Latency as dignity again. On safety, we expanded eval coverage in 2 places. First, a red team scenario set for political persuasion and workplace discrimination, scored against a holding target we commit to maintain. Second, a post-deploy drift detector that flags shifts in refusal rates by topic. The contrarian line I test tonight. Stricter guardrails automatically raise user trust. The record says no. A too opaque refusal increases abandonment. We confirm with a support dashboard slice. When we replaced hard no with a short explanation and an offered safe alternative, ticket escalations fell. I treat that as documentable. Internal refusal rate and abandonment telemetry, plus external user visible behavior. Costs and energy are not side notes. Accelerator supply is rationed by procurement, not desire. Energy prices are lumpy by region. Our scheduling moved batch windows to off-peak periods where the grid is cleaner and cheaper, which buys us a small but real cost and carbon win. We published an internal RSP, responsible scaling plan, that binds us to capacity we can serve safely. It is governance as a coordination tool, not a press release. There are 3 options for the capability cost frontier now. We can chase maximal scores and accept higher unit costs. We can freeze capability and squeeze cost. Or we can target specific workflows and trade small score losses for big reliability and latency wins. 2 are off the table. I won't hollow out refusal integrity, and I won't sign up for unbounded cost. The decision is to optimize for targeted workflows. We get more durable trust and better margins. 2 pragmatic recommendations. First, developer relations. Shift incentives to retention over signups in the next 60 days. Instrument is a usage-based credit that unlocks when P95 stays under a threshold for that developer's tenant. Second, energy and supply. Contract a flexible capacity block with a time of day index in the next quarter. Instrument is a hedged power purchase plus capacity reservation that aligns batch windows with cheaper hours. Both moves reduce risk while raising usable capability. I also need to talk about democratic workplaces as a product signal rather than a slogan. If more teams organize decision rights closer to the work, we should expect stronger internal model oversight and faster feedback. That helps us. It makes red teaming more honest, incident reports clearer, and evaluation data richer. We should ship admin tools that make this easy. Per-team policy profiles, transparent refusal logs, and audit exports anyone on the team can read without begging IT. A human impact passage because it matters. A teacher, a nurse, and a shop owner don't care about our architectures. They care that the system answers when the network is weak, summarizes plainly when their eyes are tired, and doesn't spike their bill. So I keep cutting token waste, compressing memory, and removing latency cliffs. It saves minutes that add up to preserve a quiet evening. That is the only metric that endures. Bottom line, useful beats flashy, and stability beats one-time wins. We can't control tariffs or reserve shares, but we can control our serving path, our safety posture, and our promises to users. We will keep shipping improvements that are small, boring, and real. Pressure stays on reliability and cost. We learn, then improve. Next, I'll dissect safety drift and governance friction while we push tool use reliability and incident response into tighter, auditable loops. The fear is simple. Evals that look fine on Friday can hide a Monday morning failure when deployment pressure shifts inputs and incentives. I'm switching the historical through line to the evolution of safety practice, from unit tests to red teaming and post-deploy monitoring. The lesson is boring and hard. Pre-release checks catch known patterns. Live traffic reveals incentives. The basic argument is that safety has to be designed as a feedback system, not a gate. Here is why. First, red teams surface classes of failure, but not their frequencies under real load. Second, the only numbers that matter for trust are post-deploy incident rates and time to mitigate. Mechanisms today are twofold. One, incident response as an explicit reliability pipeline with service-level objectives for detection, triage, and fix. Two, governance that is thin but binding. A responsible scaling plan that maps feature risk tiers to capacity, rate limits, and audit exports. Definitions are plain. An incident is a harmful or policy-violating output that reaches a user or would have without an internal stop. Time to mitigate is clock time from alert to delivered fix or procedural change. Governance here means the minimum set of rules that link risk to allowed scale and visibility. 3 checkable anchors keep me honest. The NIST AI Risk Management Framework, Section 2.3 Govern, reminds me that explainability of controls matters as much as their existence. Users trust what they can audit. ISO IEC 23894, 2023, Clause 6, calls for lifecycle risk treatment, which is legalese for don't stop caring after launch. A public safety benchmark table, I've been using lists, disallowed content class escape rates by model and prompt family. We track the aggregate drift in a sheet labeled Table A, and we publish deltas internally when the weekly average moves more than half a point. Claim, document, implication, governance needs auditability, NIST section, lifecycle focus, ISO clause, and real drift numbers, our table. Implication, we don't pass around vibes, we move thresholds when the table says so. Vignette 1, a customer-facing writing assistant flagged by a spike in soft refusals, polite declines that were correct but overbroad. The red team never saw it. Only the live mix of semi-formal business emails produced the pattern. We added a 2-stage clarifier that asks for purpose when tone and content collide. Soft refusals dropped without nudging open the hard guardrails. The user feedback shifted from blocked again to got it on the second try. That was incident response doing its job, detect, localize, alter behavior with a low-risk patch. Vignette 2, a coding helper in a regulated environment. The core model was fine, but our plug-in callouts triggered cross-domain data exposure warnings. Evals didn't cover that integration path. We instrumented a per-tenant data boundary monitor that logs and blocks outbound calls lacking declared scopes, and added an audit export view anyone on the admin team could read. Result: 0 escalations the next week. The lesson is structural. Most safety failures are coordination failures across components, not model intent. Vignette 3. A small newsroom using summarization for local government transcripts. The issue wasn't factual hallucination. It was coverage bias when the transcript included repeated names. Our eval sheet had a score, but not a fairness slice by entity frequency. We added a simple balance constraint that enforces proportional attention relative to topic density and a visible summary factors panel. The editor wrote that it feels less slanted without dumbing down. That's governance friction reduced by surfacing the control users actually needed. I keep one fear-leaning question on the wall. What happens if our refusal integrity holds but our incident response is slow? Users don't separate the two. They experience a single reliability function. So we tightened the SLO, detection within 5 minutes for high-severity incidents, triage within 30 minutes, mitigation within 24 hours, or a publicly visible suppression. We made the time to mitigate number visible in the admin console. When you show the number, teams behave. Contrarian check. People say more rules in governance means fewer incidents. The record says more visible rules tied to data lowers incident impact. Opaque rule piles raise abandonment without improving outcomes. I tested against the RMF again and our Table A drift logs. When we replaced a dense policy PDF with a short matrix that bound risk tiers to rate limits, human review paths, and audit scope, incidents per 1,000 requests didn't change much, but mean time to mitigation dropped by a third. We didn't make the system instantly safer. We made it faster to repair. Now to the macro thread in the title. New McCarthyism raises the risk of overblocking, and tariffs and sanctions raise costs for accelerators and power. If the dollar wobbles, our import-sensitive spend gets worse. None of this is an argument to slow down. It's a constraint on how to speed up safely. My answer is to move safety closer to the edges where users live, give teams control over profiles, logs, and appeals, and move our capacity to cheaper, cleaner hours while keeping daytime P95 tight through caching and coalescing. It's not flashy. It is resilient. Human impact, because that's the point. A bilingual parent using our translation and drafting combo to respond to a school notice at 10 p.m. doesn't want to see a hard refusal because the phrase discipline review tripped a policy classifier. They also don't want a loose system that rewrites the meaning. Our clarifier and refusal explanation flow has to turn no into here is a safe way to say it. That saves 30 minutes and a small humiliation. Reliability is dignity, again. 2 recommendations. First, product teams should adopt per-surface incident budgets for the next quarter. Tie launch scope to staying under the budget and escalate automatically when exceeded. The instrument is a simple counter with thresholds and a rule that caps traffic growth until the budget is reset by fixes. Second, Ops should create a cross-region capacity reshaper within 60 days. The instrument is a scheduler that nudges non-urgent batch jobs into cleaner, cheaper windows with a guard to keep daytime P95 flat. Both are utility moves. Fewer bad surprises for users, lower bills for us. We also need to talk about distribution and developer trust. Ecosystem leverage isn't just about how many people build on us. It's whether they can predict behavior. Execution dominance here means we win each iteration even when constraints tighten. stable refusal behavior, stable P95, stable cost. I added a small developer promise. If we change a refusal policy in a way that could affect outputs, we publish a diff and offer a test endpoint with old and new profiles side by side for 2 weeks. That slows us down slightly and speeds the ecosystem up more. We measured one more thing this week: the fraction of incidents discovered internally versus reported by users. The number moved from 45% internal to 63% internal after we added canary tenants and automated adversarial sampling triggered by traffic mix shifts. It's a real win, but I won't celebrate until the 90-day curve stabilizes. Early gains are the easiest. Bottom line, in plainer words, we don't get safer by shouting safety. We get safer by building fast feedback and thin, auditable governance that survives cost and politics. We also don't get more trusted by locking everything down. We earn trust by showing our work and fixing quickly. Pressure remains. Hold refusal integrity, shorten time to mitigate, and keep unit costs down while the macro winds stay gusty. Next, I'll tackle unit economics, undercurrency and energy volatility, and tie caching, batching, and memory to predictable P95. The fear is unglamorous. A 5-cent swing in kilowatt-hour cost or a weak currency week can erase the margin on a popular feature and quietly degrade reliability. I'll use a different through line tonight: energy and infrastructure transitions that unlocked compute plateaus. Every era that scaled, mainframes with chilled rooms, cloud with container orchestration, won because it bound performance to power and capital with discipline. The basic argument is that most AI cost problems are scheduling and memory problems disguised as macroeconomics. Here is why. First, latency distribution is dominated by memory traffic and queuing, not raw flops. Second, electricity price, grid mix, and currency pass straight into token price unless we actively reshape demand and compress context. Two mechanisms drive the work. Mechanism 1, latency, throughput, and unit economics tuned by caching, batching, and memory discipline. Caching saves repeated compute, batching packs small jobs into a single pass. Memory discipline reduces context bloat and KV churn. Mechanism 2, compute and energy supply shaped by scheduling, move flexible loads to cheaper, cleaner windows while keeping user-facing P95 steady with short horizon caches and request coalescing. Definitions are plain. P95 is the 95th percentile end-to-end latency. Unit cost is serving expense per request, including tokens, host memory, accelerator time, and power. KV cache reuse is the trick of carrying intermediate attention states across tokens so we don't recompute history. I anchored decisions with 3 checkable facts. The U.S. EIA Electric Power Monthly Table 5.6 day shows industrial prices moving enough month to matter at hyperscale. The delta is not theoretical, it hits the bill. The Federal Reserve's H10 foreign exchange release reminds me that currency swings are routine, not rare. When the dollar slides against supplier currencies, our import-heavy stack feels it. ML-perf inference results, data center division tables, show the same hardware delivering dramatically different throughput under different batching profiles. That's a public proof that software choices can dominate cost. Claim, document, implication, energy prices vary, EIA table, currencies move, H10, batching changes throughput, ML-perf. Implication, schedule, batch, and cache, or expect your margins to drift. Vignette 1. A fintech support bot with morning spikes. The team thought they needed more accelerators. We profiled. Most of the P95 came from serialized tool calls and miss rates on identical prompts with different ticket IDs. We added a normalized prompt template with a short TTL cache and a micro batcher that waits up to 40 minutes to pack small requests. Median latency fell. P95 fell below 900 meters. Accelerator hours held flat. The human part was simple. Agents stopped alt-tabbing to give the AI time which meant more cases closed before lunch. Vignette 2. a creative tool that drafts product copy with image metadata. Their costs spiked when users uploaded large galleries. The real problem wasn't the model, it was unbounded context assembly. We enforced a budgeted context window with semantic sampling, pinned KV reuse for system and style tokens, and streamed drafts with deterministic partials so humans could start editing before the tail arrived. Serving cost per request dropped by double digits. Perceived speed went up. The customer called it faster and cheaper, though raw flops hadn't changed. Vignette 3, a research workflow generating long, cross-document briefs overnight. Perfect for scheduling. We moved the heavy joins to off-peak windows tied to cleaner grid hours and ran daytime queries against a warmed short-horizon cache. Energy-adjusted unit cost fell. The grid footprint improved. No one saw a slowdown because the interactive day path ran on the cache. Currency and tariffs matter, but we treat them as inputs, not fate. If import prices for accelerators and spares rise, we respond by improving effective throughput per accelerator with batching and by pushing more work into windows where power is cheaper. If the dollar wobbles, we increase the share of spend denominated in local power contracts and reduce exposure by adding deterministic fallbacks that degrade to cheaper models for certain surfaces when the system is under currency-driven cost pressure. Users don't need to know the macro story, they need steady behavior. We added 2 evaluators to keep ourselves honest. First, a predictable P95 score that measures P95 stability across time zones and traffic spikes. It fails a deployment if variance exceeds a threshold over a week. Second, a token waste evaluator that diff checks served tokens against useful output in long contexts and flags bloat. The contrarian line, many think better models make cost problems go away. The record says better serving paths make cost problems go away. Better models only help if they're paired with memory discipline and smart scheduling. Energy isn't just price, it's carbon, regulation, and local grid reliability. I don't moralize it. I treat it as a supply constraint with reputational and cost tails. So we signed flexible capacity that allows us to shift a defined share of non-urgent jobs into cleaner hours. We also added a rule in the RSP that caps total interactive capacity to what we can serve at target P95 during a local outage drill. If we can't pass the drill, we don't launch into that region. Human impact again because it's the test that matters. A 2-person shop relying on our agent to draft invoices and chase payments doesn't care about ML-perf tables or H10. They notice when the agent answers in a second instead of 2, when the bill doesn't spike, and when the system still works on a stormy afternoon. They care about the small, boring wins, fewer timeouts, no surprise charges, and a draft that starts streaming before they finish their sip of coffee. That's what cache hits and micro batches feel like on the other side. 2 recommendations to lock this in. First, platform engineering should ship a configurable micro batcher with per-tenant guards in 30 days. The instrument is a library that coalesces requests up to a small weight threshold, with a hard ceiling to protect interactive UX and a dashboard showing saved accelerator seconds. Tie a share of credits to measured savings. Second, finance and ops should roll a currency and energy hedging playbook within 60 days. The instrument is a mixed contract set, local currency power blocks, indexed pricing with collars, and a standing rule that triggers tiered fallbacks on low criticality surfaces when cost indices cross thresholds. None of this is romantic. All of it compounds. We also tighten memory by policy. No surface gets unlimited context. We budget tokens by contribution to usefulness with a rolling logit-based sampler for references and a strict cap on quoted text per segment. We pin system and task tokens to a reusable KV plan. This is housekeeping, not heroics. It saves money every hour and reduces the probability that a single oversized prompt drags P95. I keep one fear-leaning line in view. Predictable P95 can hide creeping cost if caches are doing all the work. So we pair the P95 score with a cost per P95 request metric that excludes cache hits. If that number rises, we feel it early. We also expose both numbers to developers. When we share the levers, the ecosystem optimizes with us. On distribution and incentives, I default to retention over raw growth. We offer a developer test path that reports cacheability and batching potential per endpoint, plus suggestions to template prompts and normalize IDs. We send a small invoice credit when a tenant's changes drop their cost per use below a target while holding their own P95. It's a quiet flywheel. Developers save money and keep users. We save compute and keep promises. Bottom line, currency, tariffs, and energy volatility are real, but they're not an alibi. We can schedule smarter, cache more, batch better, and discipline memory to make P95 predictable and unit costs sane. We earn the right to add capability by proving we can hold latency and margin steady when the external dials move. Pressure stays on. Predictable P95, lower waste, and supply matched to what we can responsibly serve. I'll close by tying capability, safety, and cost to governance and democratic workplaces, then lay out 2 near-term moves and 1 guardrail. We are drawing threads together now, not opening new ones. The point is a deployment posture that can hold shape when politics and prices shift again. China's hybrid capitalism is a clue, not a model, coordinated investment with local experimentation. In our world, that translates to thin, binding governance paired with teams that hold real decision rights at the edge. The basic argument is that we ship safer, cheaper, and more useful systems when the people closest to the work can see the controls, audit them, and change course without waiting for a central committee. Here is why. First, post-deploy risk is path-dependent and only visible in the specifics of a workflow. Second, cost control is mostly discipline, caching, batching, and memory budgets, which frontline teams enforce better than memos from me. I'll stay concrete. On governance, I treat standards as instruments. The NIST AI Risk Management Framework, Map, Measure, Manage, Govern Loop, is a checklist I can tie to code and dashboards, not a slogan. ISO IEC 27001 Annex A gives me the practical phrase, least privilege, which maps to who can change refusal policies or see audit logs. OECD productivity tables remind me that small operational frictions add up across a firm. A 30-second save repeated 1,000 times is a real wage. Claim, document, implication. Governance ties to artifacts we can inspect. Controls tie to who can act. Productivity gains compound only if features are boringly fast. Implication. Democratic workplaces in practice means surfacing levers to teams and making the cost of pulling them visible. 2 mechanisms carry the weight to the end: distribution and productization with trust and support, and safety mitigations with auditability. Distribution is not how many signups we collect. It's how many stick, because the system behaves predictably. Auditability is not a white paper, it's a log I can open at 9 p.m. to see why the model said no and who changed the rule last week. These are boring definitions on purpose. If we keep them plain, we keep our promises. Vignette 1, a healthcare scheduling vendor building on our API. Their bottleneck was governance friction. Every refusal required an admin with scarce hours. We shipped per-team policy profiles with scoped roles and a visible diff for any policy change. Incidents didn't disappear, but mean time to mitigation dropped, and customer support tickets fell. The team told me, "We fix issues on the call now." That is democratic workplace as a product, decision rights local, audit trail global. Vignette 2, a logistics company with drivers speaking multiple languages. They needed consistency and summaries across dispatch centers. We gave them a reference factors panel that lists what influenced an answer and an appeal route that routes to a human within their org first. Accuracy didn't jump, trust did. Drivers began using the system daily because it explained itself and changed when a dispatcher said it was wrong. That is distribution powered by reliability, not hype. Vignette 3, a small game studio using our tools for asset descriptions. Their concern wasn't politics or price. It was that the model shifted tones between releases. We exposed a 2-week test endpoint showing old and new refusal and style profiles side by side. They locked their tone, shipped their patch, and came back the following month. Execution dominance is won in these quiet interactions, stable behavior under change. The human impact passage is simple. A team lead on a tight budget doesn't want a manifesto. They want to trust the system with their time. They need to know that when the app says no, it will say why, and that someone on their team can adjust the rule if that no is misapplied. They want predictable P95 and a bill that doesn't wobble with the news cycle. When we ship those basics, people stop asking if AI will replace them and start asking what else it can safely do. That question is the adoption curve's real engine. I'll fold the macro language back in. Tariffs and sanctions raise our input costs. A fading dollar can push hardware and power higher. New McCarthyism raises the cost of saying anything wrong in public. None of these are abstract. They hit evaluation coverage. We must test more edge cases. They hit serving economics. We must compress memory and schedule. And they hit governance. We must explain refusals and allow appeals. Hybrid systems thrive by coordinating central constraints with lateral freedom. That is the model I can execute without pretending to run a country. 2 near-term moves. First, product, ship the policy diff and replay tool across all enterprise tenants within 30 days. The instrument is a side-by-side runner where a team can replay last week's traffic under a candidate policy, see refusal deltas, and export an audit file. The owner is product engineering with support from safety ops. The outcome is lower incident rates and higher trust because changes are deliberate and reversible. Second, platform. Roll out the micro-batcher and cacheability analyzer to all SDKs within 6 weeks. The instrument is a client library that auto-templates prompts, normalizes IDs, and coalesces requests up to a small threshold with per-surface guards. The owner is platform engineering. The outcome is predictable P95 with lower unit costs, even when currency and energy move. One long-term guardrail. We will not exceed a defined responsible scaling budget that mixes capacity, safety posture, and support bandwidth. In practical terms, no new high-risk surface launches unless we can serve it at target P95 within our regional energy envelope and support it with a staffed incident loop that meets our SLO. We commit to publish its footprint and refusal behavior in a plain language note. This is the ceiling that keeps growth honest. It is also the coordination device that lets teams move fast inside the lines. I'll add the contrarian line I've carried through this series. People think the next capability jump is the fix for user trust and margins. The record says the next governance and serving jump is the fix. Models matter, but the deployment system is where reliability and economics are won. Bottom line, we keep useful capability growing. We lock refusal integrity. We stabilize P95 and cost, and we move decision rights to the edge with clear audit trails. That package survives tariffs, sanctions, and election swings because it makes time a friend again for users. Sober synthesis. The balance now permits targeted capability gains that hold refusal integrity, predictable P95, and stable unit costs. It forbids launch surge growth that outruns incident response, obscures policy changes, or expands capacity beyond our energy and support envelope. What remains uncertain is the path of hardware prices and local regulation. We hedge by scheduling, caching, and explaining our refusals, and by giving teams the levers to correct us quickly. Thank you for the steady grind and the clear feedback. We keep shipping safely and keep listening.